Yeah, we could talk hypertrophy this time. I think that'd be good. Most of our clients are into
Mm.
that. I mean, and we could talk about hypertrophy, and then we could talk about how it carries over to performance, right? Because I think a lot of
Yep.
times guys they you know, like they shy away from saying that they want to get bigger, or they shy away from saying like that should be a focus of theirs. There's this whole, I don't know, like I'm too good for that type of thing, right? Like where
Yeah.
I don't train for vanity, and like you're missing the point of hypertrophy, and you're missing the functionality of hypertrophy if all you chase is performance. You know, eventually that runs out, and like I think that goes back to our background too in CrossFit, right, Randy? Like where
Mm-hmm.
it's like guys can train and do only CrossFit, and at some point you're not going to get any better at CrossFit because you lack you know, the amount of muscle tissue that you need to spend time in hypertrophy, you need to spend time in different phases, you know, focusing on different aspects of endurance and training different systems. So you know, I think we can talk about how hypertrophy lends itself well to performance after we talk about hypertrophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. One of them is that when people say they don't care about the vanity, it's a lie, right? Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
you do. Everybody cares about how they look, so that's
Yeah.
bullshit. But
Everybody wants to look good naked.
yeah, but I hear that on like training consultation calls a lot, where people are like, "Yeah, no, it's all good. Like, I don't really care about being lean and ripped and jacked or whatever. You know, I just want to be able to perform." It's a lie, and
Mm-hmm.
it's because I think people think that it's like not virtuous to want that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to look good, because people talk about functionality and they're like, well, I want to be able to like carry my wife out of a burning building and fight bad guys. And it's like, cool. Yeah. That's like maybe something that will happen maybe once in your life, but probably never.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're doing every single day is you're interacting with other people, and the way that you look plays a huge role in how those interactions go, whether you believe it or not. So what's more functional than looking really good and having doors open for you because of the way that you look? If you didn't care
Yep.
about the way that you if you didn't care about the way that you look, like why do you comb your hair, or why do you brush your teeth, or why do you shave?
Mm-hmm.
Like of course you fucking care, dude.
Right.
And then there's the other side of the coin, which is, yeah, even if we're talking about performance, like you're saying, Keegan, um, you know, the size of a muscle is going to play a big role in its ability to output force, and sometimes that's the thing that's holding
Mm-hmm.
your performance back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Right. And you know, to that same kind of concept, man, like people get so caught up in like, oh, I don't want to look a certain type of way, or they say that they don't want to look a certain type of way, or that they don't really care about that, but that all they care about is performance. And the funny part about that is like, okay, well then let's take the top performers in whatever sport it is that you're trying to get good at, and let's look at those guys and how they look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
And I promise you,
powerlifters that,
dude, like they're freaking jacked, right? They're like, oh, I want to do
Yeah.
you know, a 700-pound deadlift, and you know, I want to be able to run, you know, a mile
Mm-hmm.
in a decent time at the same time. It's like, cool. Well, let's look at
Yeah.
the people through history that have been able to do that, and let's look at how they look.
Mm-hmm. Or you look at natural powerlifters, and they're either really skinny or they're fat as fuck but strong. But I mean, they don't meet their average health markers that they need to meet.
Yeah, I think like the
Just because of
majority
the
of the
amount of
time, those
fat that they
things.
apply.
Yeah, I think the majority of those things go hand in hand, right? Like you can say
Yeah.
like, okay, I want to train like a power lifter, or if you just chase the look of a power lifter, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get
Mm-hmm.
to great strength numbers, because as a byproduct of having to chase that type of physique, you have to train a certain
Yeah.
type of way, right? And so
Yep.
it's like you can actually flip the coin on both sides and go like, okay, well, I don't care about looking this way, but if I want to perform that way, then as a byproduct of that, I'm going to look that way. You know, if my
Right.
diet's correct and my training's correct. So,
Yep.
you know, it's ironic and it's funny when guys say that. And it's like Randy said, it's like, you know, I think it's kind of a cope in some ways, right? Because they're like,
Mm-hmm.
they think it's more virtuous, like you said, Randy, or it's like,
Oh yeah.
they think it's more masculine to say like, oh, I don't give a shit about the way I look. Like, yeah, you
Yep.
fucking do, dude. Everybody does.
Well, that, and then take, for example, when I was at my heaviest, or I was 221, dude, I was strong, but I was fat. But now that I got to the point where I did a bodybuilding show and I got super lean, I'm like, I never want to be that fat again. Because you can still be jacked and perform at the same time if you get dialed in enough.
there is a Yeah, there's like a misperception of like what is lean, and your perception of that changes the leaner that you get, right? So for a
Mhm.
bodybuilder, being 15% body fat is fucking fat. But for the average person, you know, they might look at someone that's 15% body fat and that's like their end goal. And they don't realize what's actually possible. And then, of course, everybody knows the people who are powerlifters that are just using the fact that they're a powerlifter as an excuse to be fat and not diet. And it's so fucking annoying. And they'll say, well,
That's strongman too.
they'll say the only reason that I'm fat is because I'm a powerlifter. It's like you're like a mediocre powerlifter and you're just a
Mhm.
fat fuck, and you would be just as strong if you were leaner. So
Yeah.
Well, and then you look at you look at top level power lifters now, and 9 out of 10 of them are in good shape, right? They're decently lean. They're not bodybuilder stage lean, right? But they're decently lean. They're athletically lean, somewhere probably
Mhm.
around the 10 to 12% range year round. Minus the super heavies, right? Like you look at the super heavies, like the Ray Williams and like those guys. But then you also look at the super heavies and you compare their numbers right now to guys underneath them. And the guys
Mhm.
underneath them, if not, you know, right neck and neck with their top numbers, are above them. So it's like, dude, you're gonna maintain and gain strength through being more athletic and leaner in the first place. So yeah.
well, if your weight cap is, let's say, 240 pounds, and you're 240 pounds at 10% body fat versus 240 pounds at 25% body fat,
Yes.
obviously the guy that's 10% body fat is stronger because more of his tissue is lean muscle. The guys who are super heavies, like at some point, mass does move mass, and so for them it would be advantageous to maximize muscle tissue, but then also fat because they need to be like close to 400 fucking pounds to be competitive. But I mean, almost nobody that we train is a competitive powerlifter. So we're getting a little bit off topic, but yeah, the hypertrophy thing is, you know, people that say they don't care about the way they look. Yeah, I agree. It's completely cope. And you're also neutering your performance if you're never focusing on those things. And one of the things that I've been talking to guys a lot about lately is, you know, the difference in the mindset when we're training for performance versus hypertrophy. So a lot of our clients' workouts, we've got, you know, a squat, like a back squat. And then later on in the workout, we'll have a hack squat or a leg extension. And, you know, when you're back squatting, it's about moving the weight from point A to point B in the most efficient fashion possible. When I'm doing a leg extension, it's about moving the weight from point A to point B in the most inefficient way possible. And I care much more about feeling it where I'm supposed to feel it versus in the squat where I don't really care if I feel it in any certain spot. So I think that it's important to make that distinction when you're training of what the goal of that exercise is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an important distinction too between, you know, bodybuilding movements or isolation movements and then compound movements, right? Because you look at like a compound movement, and so the back squat's a perfect example, right? Leg extension, like if we're looking at building quads, what's a better movement, the back squat or the leg extension? Well, it's obviously going to be the leg extension, right? And the reason is we're trying to take muscle close to failure, and when you do that with a back squat, the muscle that you end up actually failing first is your lungs and your heart.
Or in my case, my lower back.
Dude, like almost 100% of the time, if you have somebody take, you know, a 12 rep max to a 20 rep max back squat, they get out from underneath it, and what failed first was their cardio and not their actual muscle.
Yeah, that's 100% true, man. And so, you know, that's why we have to blend both of those things and pay attention to what we're doing. And I'm always running into that issue when I'm watching people lift is, you know, you can tell when somebody's just trying to move a number, right?
Yeah.
Versus when they're actually taxing that muscle. And you can feel it, dude. Like when I started paying more attention, you know, in my pulling movements, for instance, despite my back already being very well developed, like I got sore in areas that I'd never been sore before simply because I was not using momentum and I was isolating and I was stretching. If I'm doing a back squat, obviously I'm not going to do that, right? But if I'm doing a fucking leg extension or a hack squat or something, then I care much less about the load. I care about the load, but only in the context of this thing that's above it, which is the quality of the movement.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what else can we talk about with regards to hypertrophy?
Well, I was going to say with the barbell squat too, it's it's such a big compound movement that if you push really hard or close to failure, whether it's hypertrophy or powerlifting, you know, going for like RPE or RIR1 or whatever, it's going to tank your CNS, especially if you do it first. And then you're going to be gassed for the rest of your workout. So there's an intelligent way to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Where do you guys stand in terms of sets and reps for growth? I know that's a hot topic right now in like the hypertrophy social media world. And in terms of like, I don't know, you know, how much you actually need in a single session. And I think the biggest thing is kind of going along the lines of what Adam just mentioned, right, is recoverability. And one of my favorite quotes from a mentor I had a long time ago was that there's no such thing as overtraining. There's only under recovery. And I think that's, you know, that's true, right? There's only, you know, what you can recover from. And, you know, you can get more benefit out of doing more, but only if you can, you know, sleep and eat to support that.
Yeah, my opinion on that is minimum effective dose. Right. So, okay, if I can achieve, I'm only going to get so much hypertrophy out of a training session, right? So if I can grow from doing 2 hard sets, why would I do 4? Because it's like with calories. Okay, like if I can grow on 2,500 calories, eating 3,500 is not going to make me grow more muscle tissue. And the thing that we're always balancing is recovery and joint stress, right? And so why would I add more burden to my recovery potential for no extra benefit? So, you know, why would I, you know, put more load on my joints, because I'm only going to get so much out of those for, you know, my training career. So minimum effective dose. If I can do 1 hard set or 2 hard sets and it's producing the result where I'm looking in the training log and I'm seeing myself improving every week, great. But when I look at a client and, you know, they're doing double progression and they're progressively overloading every time they train and we're doing 2 sets, great. If that stops and I think the problem is volume, then we'll add another set. But you know, the whole point of this is like to avoid junk volume and not just do a bunch of sets for the sake of doing a bunch of sets, because that's why people spend 2 fucking hours in the gym. And there are plenty of people who spend lots of time in the gym and do tons of sets and they're still fucking skinny. It's because they're focused on, it's because they care so much about the reps and the sets and they don't care at all about progressive overload. And obviously there is a hypertrophy rep range and a strength rep range and all that is real. But in the end, like, progressive overload still has to happen for you to get bigger. Because if that wasn't the case, then why would bodybuilders lift weights? Why wouldn't they just do a bunch of push-ups?
Right.
True.
Bodyweight squats. Yeah.
What is your opinion on volume
and
reps and sets for growing muscles?
So the way I've been training, as far as, I mean, it's pretty much on par with what you said, but as far as like the rep ranges, I'm anywhere from like 6 upwards of 15 or even 20 reps. So it all depends on the movement. Obviously, I mean, if you do a big compound movement like a barbell squat or hack squats, getting up to 20 reps, you're going to get gassed out, you know, cardiovascular wise. But the majority of what I did, even during prep, it was maybe 2 feeder sets and 1 or 2 hard working sets, depending on how well I was recovered. So yeah, there can get to a point to where your junk volume just starts interrupting your recovery, and then you might be sore the following workout, and that same muscle group has come up. So,
yeah, there's something I was going to say and I forgot.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I think there's a minimum number of repetitions that's needed for growth, right? Like, obviously, you can't just go in and do 1 hard set of 1 on each movement and see maximum growth, but because then you're not getting any of the actual stimulus to the muscle tissue, and then there's form degradation. You're using other muscles, right? Like, isolation becomes compound. So I think there's a minimum, you know, number of repetitions that needs to be done for a set. I think 2 hard sets from 6 onward is good, but I also think that there's a cap to that, right? Because like Randy was saying, like, okay, minimum effective dose. If I'm doing 25, 30 repetitions in a single set, am I actually getting more than I would have if I had done 12 to 15 of that at a heavier weight? Or am I just increasing fatigue?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. And now, okay, I do remember what I was going to say then. Yes, that's okay. The thing you have to think about is lactic acid clearance, right? Or whatever you think is causing like the pain when you're lifting weights. So for me, I don't clear lactic acid very efficiently. And I kind of always suspected that. But then when I did that genetics test, it also confirmed that for whatever reason, like whatever my genetic profile is, I have a less capacity for that. So I tend to need longer rest times. But then also when we're talking about hypertrophy, one of the most important things is approaching failure. And if I'm doing, a set of like 25 leg extensions, typically what's going to happen is I'm going to actually have too much pain to continue before the muscle actually reaches failure. And so failure ends up being me stopping because of the pain versus me stopping because like my leg stops working. Because what I've noticed is, I'll be doing, let's say, a set of 25 leg extensions. Every single rep is the same speed, but I feel like I can't do anymore, which is indicative of it actually being pain. If it was actually failure, then I would see those reps start to slow down as I approach failure. So for me, I'm working in sets of, I never really go above 10 reps. Like I'm working in sets of 6 to 10 for most things. The only time that I don't are in muscles that are like very, very small, like curls and lateral raises and stuff like that. And that's specifically because I'm not going to be able to progressively overload on a 5 rep lateral raise, right? Because if I did 5 reps on lateral raise this week, adding 1 rep to a lateral raise set of 5 is going to be very, very difficult. And obviously I also can't add 5 pounds to a lateral raise because 5 pounds is a massive percentage of my 1 rep max. So on those, I'll bring the rep range up a little bit higher. But even still, the entire point is we have to approach failure. And yeah, if you're stopping the set because it hurts, not because those muscles actually failing, it's basically a useless set. And so now I really don't do high reps of really anything. I don't think I do anything more than like 12 reps. At least not intentionally.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, if you are consistently, if you made up your own program, you're following somebody else's program and you're consistently hitting 15 reps at the same speed, like you're not going to achieve any kind of progressive overload. And you're like at the same weight every single time for 4 sets straight. Like, yeah, you're not going to make any progress.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get close. You have to be at failure or approaching failure, right? And that's why those rest pause sets work well, because you basically get 2 approaches to failure in like a 1 minute period. But I think that is the key. Like you have to, and that's why I program like 1 rep in reserve, 2 reps in reserve, or 0 reps in reserve, is because what matters for hypertrophy is getting close to failure. And it's different for different adaptations. Like if we're going for strength or speed or whatever we're trying to focus on that session, it'll be different. But if we're talking about growing a muscle, then approaching failure, I think, becomes one of the most important aspects. And you have to decide what rep range is appropriate for that, given your own physiology, and then also what makes sense for that movement and the load you're going to be able to do on it. 17 reps on the adductor machine.
Yeah, that's the only machine where you need 17. Everything else is
the most optimal number.
Yeah, we found that out. So then what's the solution to that, Randy? Right? Because like, okay, you're not taking, let's say leg extension is a perfect example. You're doing a set of 15 repetitions before you're at like pain from the lactic acid, not pain from muscle failure. So is the solution for you, has it been more sets? Has it been trying to slowly decrease your rest times? How are you progressively overloading that to meet that stimulus to where you're getting more from that exercise rather than just saying, okay, well, I'm at pain now, so I stop?
Well, I would say the first one would be super, super strict reps and a massive range of motion. Okay. Because if I'm trying to hit failure before I hit, pain fatigue or whatever you want to call it, then, what's going to help me do that is going to be things that are going to make me hit failure sooner, which would be slower eccentrics, or it might be more range of motion, or it might be, doing a dead stop and not using any momentum. So basically anything that's actually going to make the movement harder mechanically is what's going to allow me to do that. And that's why I actually don't even really like leg extensions for myself, because most leg extension machines, the range of motion is shit, right? Like most leg extension machines, like it's really hard to get a full, ROM. So I like to do like leg presses with a close stance or hack squats where I can really like get my fucking hamstrings into my calves, massive range of motion, pause at the bottom, maybe slow eccentrics if I need to. But even still, I don't want to overdo the eccentrics. But yeah, anything that makes the movement less mechanically efficient would be the key there. What about you guys? What do you guys do for that stuff? I mean, because everybody's different. Some people can like, okay, like I'll give you an example. I have a lot of guys do rest pause training. And, typically when I'm doing a rest pause set, if I'm hitting a set of 10 and it's like pretty much failure or 1 rep in reserve, my rest pause 30 seconds, the next set, 30 seconds later, I'm getting like 3 reps. But there are some people who they clear the lactic acid really easily and they can get really close to that initial number where they can hit 10 on that first set and then get like 8 reps on the next one. And that tells you one of two things. Either they're not actually approaching failure on that first set, or they're just set up really well to be able to recover really quickly and they just don't need as much rest time. And that's the point of one-on-one coaching and getting those insights, right? Because like, how many fucking people would think about that on their own? Like, unless you train people for a long time, like you would never even have that thought.
Oh yeah.
So I think there's like, obviously we could go really deep into this, right? And start talking about CO2 tolerance and like breath holds and all of that stuff too. And, training outside of the gym and how well your body actually clears lactic acid. But I think as a means to like make it really easy for people to go that, are experiencing that type of problem. Something that goes a long way is just switching to single leg movements.
Yeah, there you go.
So like doing things unilaterally so that you're lowering the overall amount of lactic acid at one time that your body has to clear. And then taking the same amount of rest between each leg or each body or each side. Because what I see people do is like, we'll program things like Bulgarian split squats or, stationary lunges, maybe like a front foot elevated split squat. And what we'll see people do is they'll do, 8 to 12 reps on one side and go immediately into the other side.
Yeah. Without letting their heart rate come back down.
Yeah. Let your heart rate come back down, let your body clear that lactic acid so that you have the opportunity to build in the same manner on that opposite side. But that goes a long way, right? Like switching from bilateral movement to unilateral movement, just so that there's less, of that in the system at any one given time. That's why like a single leg extension is probably more beneficial for somebody like you than both at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because another thing, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was going to say, even then on the single leg, sometimes the range of motion is super shitty too. But not to get off topic, but typically what I do is, because if you're standard EOS or Planet Fitness, they're going to have like a hammer strength or something like that. And it cuts you off about 3/4 of a rep. You can always, every gym has a yoga mats, man. You can take like 2 or 3 of those things, fold them up a couple
you
of
showed
times,
me that,
and it's gonna push your calves up into the bottom of the seat, and you're gonna get some insane stretching. That, or if you have a niche gym, they have those little hustler pads where it's like an extension, so it's the equivalent of rolling up a bunch of mats. But little things like that, newbies aren't gonna know. So yeah, that's well worth kind of mentioning, so if anybody does end up watching this. So
dude, when I do leg extensions now, I do that. Okay. So I get a yoga mat and I put it around the pad, and I'm doing it to get a little bit more range of motion. But every time I do it, I'm wondering, like, is everybody in the gym looking at me thinking I'm a bitch? And it's just like, oh, my shins hurt when I push it. Like, and I want to be like, hey, just so everybody that's here right now knows, I'm doing this for range of motion, not because I have weak bitch shins. Just so you guys know.
I think about that all the time. Yep. Dude,
you gotta
think about that all the time. I'm rolling up a bunch
when your shins are all scabbed up.
Yeah. That, like, when I remember training at the SDSU gym, dude, I used to pull a ton of deadlifts there. And I would rip some heavy deadlifts and I would cut the shit out of my shins, And there was like 3 weeks in a row where every time I deadlifted, I would just cut the same scab open and just bleed all over the bar. And I would go to the front desk and I'd be like, hey, can I get a cleaning rag and some alcohol? And like the third time I did it, the front desker was like, why don't you just stop doing that exercise or something like that? And I was just like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you should just wear tall socks or something, but it's a sign you're doing it right. If your shins are all scabbed up, that means you're deadlifting right.
It's funny you say that, because there's this dude, I think I probably sent you his reel, I think a couple different times, but it's Joe Sullivan, dude. He's a big power lifter. I think he's kind of retired from powerlifting. Man, if you see that guy deadlift, that guy is blowing his shins open every single time. And it is absolutely like, it's just blooding up the barbell at that point. So dude, it's wild to see him lift sometimes. But yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is, if you do have issues with that, something that I started doing is I wear like long socks that like go all the way up to my knees, so it kind of helps mitigate some of that too. If you're
Yeah, I've
sensitive
been
to that
lifting
kind
in like long pants now when I do lower body stuff,
yep,
and that's been
yep.
helping too. Or I'll take my knee my knee sleeves and I'll just put them around my shins.
Oh yeah, that works too.
Yeah. Talking about single leg unilateral stuff, whether it's upper body or lower body, this actually would be a good question for you, Keegan. I get asked a lot, like, hey, I have one arm that's stronger than the other, one leg that's stronger than the other. Do you think that unilateral training is a good way to fix that? And do you think that it's actually even important to address that in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for the biggest one would be injury prevention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of times that is the first sign that an injury is actually going to occur, because what you have is a muscular imbalance, right? So you've got some in some way, you've got one side that's stronger as an adaptation to the other side being weaker. Now our body's supposed to adapt, right? So I think that's, there's
some kind of serious echo going on here.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's from Adam or you, but there's like a really bad echo.
I'll put myself on mute just in case.
Yeah, let's see. Okay.
All right.
Cool. Yeah, I think that went away. All right. Yeah. I think the biggest issue with that is the potential for injury. And so the first thing that I like to do is I'll ask clients for video of movement, right? So I can see like, okay, yeah, like your right side is doing this, your left side is compensating by doing X, Y, or Z. And then you can see where they're weak by maybe doing some stabilization or mobility exercises. And then you just program around that. So I do think it's important, maybe less in terms of like immediate performance, but long-term injury prevention, I do like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that think that there's a problem in itself if one side is stronger than the other.
No,
but it's not really an issue in itself, right? And I have this like with Bulgarian split squats, for instance. So one of my, just the way that maybe it's from lifting a certain way for so long, but like my left foot is always pointed directly forward when I squat, and then naturally my right femur tends to rotate outward, and so obviously either I have a weak glute on the left side or I have a weak adductor on the right side, one or the other.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think that that's something where you need to like spend every single day attacking, right? But maybe it's like, hey, once a week I throw in just some right-sided Copenhagen planks, right? Or some like left-sided hip airplanes, right? Like, dude, there's ways where you can layer it in where it's not super annoying, and over time it's going to develop the musculature to even you out. But I mean, like, it also depends how egregious it is, right? Like if I have a client that's like, hey man, my right shoulder is stronger, and I have them send me a video and it's like, I can barely see you locking out the right side sooner than the left, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And sometimes it's an artifact of an old injury, right?
Yeah,
and then
or just life, right? Like,
yeah,
the fact that you put your left hand on your steering wheel and not your right, for your entire life, like you're sitting in a lopsided position, or you're at your desk and you have a tendency to slump to one side. Like it's just natural for us to kind of go into to find these positions that are more comfortable, and obviously that's going to lengthen one side and tighten up the other. So like you're going to have some sort of imbalance, and I don't think it's absolutely necessary to attack it 100% of the time. That's not what I was saying. I think it depends on how egregious it is. Videos are important, and then for injury prevention, if it is really bad, like there's things that you can do to start to even it out. However, it shouldn't be something that you obsess about, right? Like your body's doing that as a compensation pattern, just because you're stronger in whatever area.
That's a really interesting insight too, because I think as coaches, it's up to us to decide if a client has a legitimate concern or they are overemphasizing something and being neurotic about it, right? Because, we have to make sure that we're programming effectively for the client and all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of the time they get like fixated on stuff, and we have to kind of like talk them off that ledge and be like, hey, actually, this isn't really as big of a thing as you think it is. Yeah. But then sometimes maybe it is. So, and that's another important part of having a good coach who's experienced is like, hey, I'll actually be able to tell you if this thing is a problem or not, or even, and from a programming perspective, like I'll be able to tell you why you're not progressing and think about all these things that maybe you're not thinking about. But yeah, I mean, I run into all the time people saying like, my left side's stronger than my right side. And like you said,
Yeah.
you watch them and it's like barely any different. And you're like, dude, that's just like, that's how humans are. Like, you're always going to have a side that's stronger than the other. Okay. Like, for instance, you know this from Olympic lifting, when you're teaching somebody how to jerk, you know that drill where you push them.
Yeah. One side's naturally going to recover. Yeah.
You push, when someone's like, well, should I jerk with my left foot forward or my right foot forward? I would, what's that thing you do? Like, you shove them, right? And then whatever foot they use to balance themselves.
And you go behind them and you push them forward, and whatever foot goes forward to catch, that's the foot that should
just
go
slam them into the fucking ground. Be like, okay, this is not the sport for you. Actually, you have no self-preservation instincts.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think that there's like, there is some responsibility of the coach to make sure it's not egregious. Right. Because obviously at some point, if they are training for performance and they're trying to push specific numbers, or they're, producing maximum output power in suboptimal positions, there is a duty for you as a coach to try and even things out. However, it doesn't have to be like over the top. It doesn't have to be an everyday thing. It could be layered into the program simply where it's like, hey, one day a week you're doing this side, one day a week you're doing this. And over time, that's going to help even things out. But you're right, man. People freak out about the smallest things. And I think one of the biggest things that we get all the time is like weight loss, right? Like, people have been on the program for 3 weeks and they're like, dude, I've lost only 6 pounds. And it's like, well, like, that's 2 pounds a week. And if you average that across a year, it's 104 pounds. So what's the issue? And they're like, I just thought I would be further by now.
Well, I think that's
like,
an important part
how long did it take you to get fat? Right? Because it's like, it's going to take some time to get unfat. let's just focus on consistency and over time it'll fix itself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And also, like, people you see yourself in the mirror every day. So you're the last person that's going to notice physique changes. And a lot of time people will say, oh, I don't feel like my body's changing that much. And I'm like, well, look at your progress photo from where you started and now. And they're like, oh shit. But you're seeing yourself every day. That's why the first thing that people say is like, oh, I went to this family reunion and these people I hadn't seen in 6 months were like, holy shit, what happened? And I didn't know what they were talking about. Well, it's because all they have is the reference point from before to now, whereas you have a reference point every time you walk past a fucking mirror. So you don't really notice that stuff. So do you guys want to do some questions? Because we only have about 20 minutes left.
Yeah, dude. So one of the questions I got specifically was,
we have some in the chat too, but let's go yours first.
Yeah, no, let's do those. Let's do the live one.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Dylan, always pumped out squats and split. Oh, okay. Hold on. What questions? Randy and others. Question about eccentric time. It's hard for me to read this because the text is so small. When listed on a workout, it says 5-second eccentric, and let's say it's an RDL. Is that? Oh, he's asking what eccentric means. Essentially, he's saying, okay, if I have a 5-second eccentric, does that mean that I'm doing 2 to 5 seconds down, then 2.5 seconds up? No. Okay, so the eccentric portion, guys, is the opposite of what the work is. Okay, so the bench press, how you determine if the bench press was successful was you pressing the weight. So the eccentric portion is the opposite of the work portion. So in an RDL, it would be bringing it down to the ground. In a lat pull, it would be the bar returning. In a shoulder press, it would be the bar coming back down, right? So the eccentric is when you are resisting force. The concentric is when you are producing the force. Yeah, pretty simple one there. Let's see. Did anyone else ask anything? No. Okay. So yeah, what questions did you get, Keegan? Because I got a few as well. I'm sure.
So the top one was what's our favorite protein powder?
I like the carnivore stuff because whey bothers my stomach because I'm Untermensch. I'm a little bit lactose intolerant, so I like the beef protein isolates.
Have you tried just tolerating it?
I've given it a shot, man, but I look at it, I just get so mad.
Have you tried not being a bitch?
No, I don't know what it is. Like, the older I get, the less tolerant I seem to be to dairy. It even used to be yogurt was fine, and now even Greek yogurt seems to bother me. I think it's just an age-related thing. I don't know.
That's unfortunate.
So what about you guys?
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you just mute your mic if you're not talking, Adam? I'll do the same because they're just the echoes so bad.
Yeah, that's weird that it's doing that.
My favorite is Optimum Nutrition, gold standard.
Yeah, pretty
For
basic.
me, it's got some digestive enzymes in it that help me, tolerate whey a little bit better. I've been using it for so long. It's like my body almost like rejects any other type of protein powder that I try and give it now. I don't know if you guys are that way, but like after a while of like eating the same foods, you just feel so much better like on the foods that you specifically eat, right? Like I posted something in my story the other day. It was actually, it's funny that you mentioned Joe Sullivan. It was his girlfriend threw up that post about, consistently eating the same foods and why that's better. A meal plan is better than macros. So for me, yeah, the Optimum Nutrition, gold standard.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there is something to that for sure. And then another consideration for me is not using whey as a replacement for food all the time, right? Because okay, and that's the problem with macros, okay? That whey protein digests so quickly that there's actually a lot of evidence that a portion of it turns into blood glucose and doesn't even, stays an amino acid in the blood. And so I think that if you have a whey shake after your training, great. And maybe in a pinch, if you have to have whey, but it's absolutely not the case that you could just replace all of your protein sources with whey and get the exact same effect. And that is a huge downside to the whole, just if it fits your macros kind of bullshit. So what about you, Adam? What do you do? What do you use?
Yeah, I think I use Arms Race Nutrition. I use their foundation, which is like a whey blend, and then they also have a whey isolate. So I swap between the two. But to kind of go off of what you were talking about as far as macros, I use macros, but this was quite the learning experience with prep. I did the whole macros thing. I would highly suggest if you go into a hard dieting phase, like you're trying to go fat loss, is follow a meal plan, man, because it's literally your meals are right there. You eat the same thing every single time. Because I am a big foodie. I love flavor and stuff like that. But it got to a point to where I was adding little things here and there, and like not weighing it. And I probably should have been doing that. So my conditioning would have been a lot better. But yeah, as far as a meal plan, everything's just right there, and then you just follow it. So yeah, it's just consistency.
I think that one of the biggest pieces of evidence that just going on macros is not enough is that, okay, and this is a stupid thought experiment, but you can't just eat all of your required calories and macros for the first 6 months of the year and then not eat for 6 months, right? And I know it's an exaggeration, but that's just evidence that there is something to the idea of meal timing, okay? And then the other thing we have to consider is we know that your body processes nutrients differently at different times, which is why we have a pre-workout or a post-workout nutrition that's different. We also know with insulin, right? When people use exogenous insulin, that's going to change the rate of absorption and those sorts of things. And then there's also anabolics like trenbolone changes nutrient partitioning. So, you could have the same diet on no tren as you do with tren, and it would do different stuff. The food would do different stuff in your body. So it literally isn't just macros. There's something to be said about how that food digests and how quickly it digests, given your physiology, given what you're doing that day. And, you could be fasted cardio burns fat so well because you don't have any glucose to go off of. So your body's going to use fat stores. And look, cardarine, for instance, L-carnitine, we know those things help us metabolize nutrients differently. So it's not just macros. And that is why it's so important to have an actual set meal plan and not just say, oh, it's 70 grams of carbs from Pop-Tarts. It's the same as 70 grams of carbs from rice. It's obviously not.
Yeah, it's not. And I mean, there is, right? there is the law of thermodynamics, but if we're talking about just weight loss or weight gain, yeah, maybe that's where there's evidence to support, right? Hey, if you stick with these amount of calories over, you're going to gain weight, and if you're under by this many calories, you'll lose weight. But the way that it impacts your body is there's no debate.
Yeah, I think that it's the calories in, calories out thing is silly because you can't control the calories out portion because so many things are happening when you put the food in the system that we don't know what the calorie output is going to be. And so the calories are a good guideline. It's a good to get us in the ballpark. But the thing that goes in and what you're doing at that time is going to play a huge role in the output portion, which is enough to really throw it off to where you can't really say. So yeah, totally true. Especially when it comes to body weight, right? Because like somebody who's 250 pounds and 10% body fat versus somebody who's 250 pounds and 30% body fat are going to have two very different responses to that food because because the guy that's 250 of muscle is going to be burning way more fucking calories.
He's also on trend.
He's also likely on trenbolone, which I would never do because that would be, against the law. So I'm Natty and I'm vegan.
Natty Vegan Keegan.
Yeah, Natty Vegan Keegan. Have you guys ever tried any crazy diets? Like, because I've tried vegan before. Have you guys done like carnivore, vegan, any crazy experiments?
I've done carnivore I've done carnivore for like short bursts. And then I've done like the extended fast thing, right? Like the 3-day fast. But I've never really, no, man, like I haven't done anything extremely crazy. I've kind of stuck with like meat, rice, fruit, the majority of the time that I've been trying to get, swole and perform better. That's kind of been my go-to.
Yeah. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, the craziest thing that I did, I didn't do any like keto or any kind of like fad diets or anything like that, but it was during prep and I had to legitimately eat the leanest meat possible. So like whitefish, chicken breast, or like 96.4 ground beef. And it was just strict vegetables, like no peas, no carrots, no corn, because they're all starchy carbs. And I was eating green beans and sauteed onions and some kind of meat of choice for like 8 days straight. Dude, it worked, but dude, it was rough, man. It was rough because I'm huge on carbs.
Yeah, I have no desire to be a bodybuilder, but I do think that, people make fun of bodybuilders, but it's the sport that requires more discipline than any other sport in the world because it's a 24-hour sport, right? Whereas like you could get pretty damn good at really any other sport by just focusing on the training and maybe nutrition's kind of a side thing. But with bodybuilding, dude, it's like your sleep, it's your eating, you have to measure like every fucking milligram of sodium. I mean, it requires more discipline. I have so much respect for bodybuilders, man. It's insane.
I definitely think everybody should try to get to that standard at least once in their life. Not necessarily have to do a show. Like the show is the fun part. You have to be, pretty muscly princess, whatever, on stage, depending on where you're going. But I think everybody should try to push themselves to their absolute limit to see how lean they can possibly get. Because the amount of mental fortitude that I progressed through prep is insane now. Like I can't wait to do the next one because it's just going to push me that much further.
And your body fat set point is lower now. So now you're going to be able to stay leaner forever.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people don't pay enough attention to, man, is like they kind of bounce back and forth too quickly between diet phases, right? And then they don't make enough progress in either one because of that, right? Like guys don't want to put on, fat and not see their six pack. And so they're not willing to like bulk to a point where they actually grew a significant amount. And then you get the opposite side and they're like, oh, well, like I can see kind of the outline of my six pack now and I'm missing how strong I was when I was, bigger. So now I'm going to go back the other way. And it's like, then they bounce back and forth between this like 10-pound range for years. And then they're all pissed off that they didn't get lean or they didn't get stronger. And it's like, well, yeah, you didn't really spend enough time in either phase. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about like, how long did it take you to get fat, right? It's like, it's going to take you a long time and you got to spend a long time in either phase to like truly make an impact. At least one that you're proud of. Right. And yeah, Adam, I agree, man. Like guys should try and get as lean as they possibly can. And try and focus on their diet as much as they possibly can, at least once, right? To see what they're made of. Because mentally there's no other sport out there like that.
One of my clients had a question.
I agree.
That I kind of want to see your guys' opinion on. Spencer asked, he said, how do you approach, like eating if you're just like not hungry, like, cause he's, a skinnier guy trying to grow, but appetite seems to be the problem. So what is your guys' strategy for, still accomplishing your meal plan if your diet or if your hunger level, your appetite's not up to par?
I've had this issue in the past before when I was going through a massing phase and I got so sick of eating whole foods. I started drinking my calories. So a lot of like orange juice, or even gummy candies too, just to get your calories in, or your carbs in, because I think I was eating probably close to like 4,500 calories at that point. But yeah, if you can't literally quite eat your foods, just drink whatever you can.
Yeah. What do you think, Keegan?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that to a degree. But also I feel like digestion is extremely important. And if we're not feeding ourselves solid foods, there's really nothing for us to, there's nothing
Absolutely.
for it to stick, right? And then all of a sudden you're just passing the food that you ate. So it is important to some degree to find foods that just happen to be more nutrient dense, right? Like honey, dates, rice, like, you know what I mean? Like eat the food, eat the foods where they just happen to be higher in caloric intake. And then for me, when I was on the smaller side, like I graduated high school, I was the same height I am right now, and I was 130 pounds. So I was 100 pounds lighter, right? And for me, I got to a point where it was like, okay, I maybe can't intake as much protein or carbohydrates anymore. So maybe I pull my proteins back, or I switch those to fattier sources and I add more fats in.
Yeah. And I think too, like,
yeah, that works too. Yep.
Yeah, I would say also like getting dirty with the food, okay? Because eventually when you have enough muscle mass, your metabolic rate will catch up and you will be able to eat more food. But we have to think about, okay, right now, what's our priority? Number one priority is to grow muscle mass and to get stronger. Is it necessarily going to be the healthiest phase for us to be in? Maybe not. But if I can say like sacrifice some of my health for the next 6 months by eating dirtier foods, like literally going to fucking In-N-Out a couple times a week, or maybe even every day. I have people where I'm like, hey, eat a cheeseburger every day. Hey, is that the healthiest thing? No, but maybe we make a little bit of a sacrifice for a few months, for the sake of getting more calories in, and then later on, we can get back to being super healthy. But if you're a skinnier guy and you're just like, I'm going to be super healthy and only eat meat and rice and fruit, you're probably never going to grow as much as you want to. So you're going to have to let the health take a little bit of a backseat temporarily.
Unless you start to throw enhancements in. Right. Because there's the enhancements out there that are going to increase your hunger. You got growth hormone, EQ, right? Like the fragments of growth, like the GHRPs, like those are going to increase your hunger cues by a significant amount. So like, unless you're willing to do that and eat clean, then yeah, you're going to have to go with higher fat foods. Like that's probably the only option unless you're going to start drinking them, but then digestion's going to take a hit at some point.
Yeah, because I did try doing liquid calories when I was. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say I did try doing a lot of liquid calories when I was really trying to grow, and I did notice that like I put stuff in a blender and it's like it would go right through me, and I didn't actually put a lot of weight on. But what really did help was, frankly, like going to fucking In-N-Out or Panda Express a couple times a week, and that got me over the hump. And was it the healthiest thing? No, but I mean, honestly, I still do that right now. I'm in a growth phase, and you guys see me post on Instagram. I got 3 double-doubles. And it's like, okay, I just do that for a little bit until I get to my desired weight. And then I pull back a little bit. So yeah, I guess that would be my opinion, Spencer, is maybe we just need to get a little bit dirtier with the food and say, let's eat. I mean, honestly, it could even be fast food, but and maybe, you strike a balance and say, well, maybe I'll just like make some burgers with some cheese and that'll be a little bit healthier. And maybe that's the balance that you want to strike there between health and calories. And then also not having so many stimulants, like if we're doing a lot of caffeine and stuff like that, that could obviously curb the appetite.
And I think, dude, this is why it's so important to have a coach, right? Because they can look at you and go like, hey, motherfucker, you're actually already fat. Like, let's stick with whole foods and let's actually go the opposite way. Or like they can look at you and be like, your set point is really lean and we just need to gain some muscle tissue. So let's eat cheeseburgers. You know what I mean? Like this is why it's so important to have that outside input. Because I feel like people are so far detached sometimes from where they're actually at. It's actually kind of shocking, man. Like 9 times out of 10, if you ask a guy like where they think their body fat is, they'll tell you around 10%.
Yeah, everybody always thinks they have way less fat to lose than they do.
And it's hilarious, dude. Like you look at somebody and you're like, dude, you need to lose like 50 pounds of fat, like 50 pounds of fat alone, and then you'll probably be 10% fat.
Yeah, how many bodybuilders like in the off season they're 270 and on stage they're like 210, But if you were to look at that guy in the off season, you'd be like, yeah, maybe he's got 15 pounds of fat on him. It's like, no, he actually had like 50 pounds of fat on him. It really is crazy how we underestimate it. And so, yeah, food selection does become important. And that's why a lot of people say, hey, rice is for bulking and potatoes are for cutting, because it's more stomach volume. It's more satiating. So you got to be smart with the food choices that you use. And like, if I have somebody that's trying to lose fat, maybe their breakfast is going to be more oatmeal because it's going to be more satiating and fibrous. And if you're trying to gain, maybe we'll use like cream of rice or toast.
No, I agree. There's a time and place for all varieties of foods. So like you guys are saying, if somebody's trying to gain weight or they're a hard gainer, just cheat meals periodically throughout the week, no limitations. Like I have a client that's 18 years old, a hard gainer, and his work ethic is phenomenal. It's incredible, but he can't gain weight worth shit. So that's part of his meal plan now, is not only is he supposed to hit his macros in his massing phase right now, he also gets additional cheat meals on top of that. So just to get his weight.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Okay, let's do like maybe just 2 more questions. So do you guys have any ones that your clients or some of our other clients have asked?
Yeah, one of mine was how often do you guys recommend getting blood work done?
Okay, I would say my opinion would be every human, maybe a year, right? And then if you're like, let's say you're on TRT or something, obviously we do a big panel right off the start to kind of like diagnose things, dial supplements into, but not just testosterone. And then maybe like, more frequently at the start to dial the doses in and see what we're correcting. So if somebody has a fucked up lipid profile and I put them on citrus bergamot, well, let's see in a couple months the change. And then if it's good, well, maybe now we can push the labs out to 6 or 8 months, right? And then maybe we can go back to like a bi-yearly or something like that.
Yeah. I like that. I usually like recommend 2 to 3 times a year for guys that are on TRT or taking, extra supplementation on top of that. But outside of that, like normal human being trying to be healthy once a year is plenty.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. What else? You guys don't have any more? I'll give you one more then. So the other question that somebody asked was about optimal time of day to do cardio versus weight training if you could basically train anytime.
So this, I think, depends on what your goals are, right? Like, I think it depends on, where you're at with your cardio. If you're trying to use it as a baseline to monitor, fat loss, or use it as a tool to assist in your metabolism, right? Like it kind of depends what you're utilizing cardio for and how hard that cardio is going to be. Because we don't want to take away from your lifting sessions unless you're in a place where you're utilizing cardio to assist in fat loss, aggressively. So that would be my take. Like always prior to lifting, if it's kind of being used in support of lifting and low intensity, steady state. And then if it's going to be high intensity stuff, either separately on a separate day or post lifting.
Yeah, I would say it depends on if the goal of the session is cardio for fat loss or if it's for performance. So if it's for fat loss, ideally it would be done in a fasted state. However, the performance probably won't be as high. And so if it's for conditioning purposes, then I want you to do it in a fed state, ideally on a day that you're not lifting or far away from the lifting. One thing that I always caution guys against is lifting fasted. Okay, because they're like, well, I would burn more fat. It's like, well, the point of the lifting session is to get stronger and preserve or build muscle mass. We're losing the fat with the calorie deficit, with the cardio we're doing throughout the day. So you always need to be fed when you're training, because I don't want to be neutering my lifting performance for the sake of fat loss. I want to be able to still get stronger while I'm losing fat. So I would never do lifting fasted. But if the goal for fat loss, if the goal for the cardio session is specifically fat loss, or that's the primary goal, then I would do it fasted. Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Adam?
Sorry, there was a bunch of noise going on. Yeah, no, I agree. That's like how we typically program people, where they have their floating movements. They have like a ruck or an assault bike, once or twice throughout the week. And, you obviously want to be fed while doing those. But yeah, no, I agree 100% with what you guys are saying.
Yeah, it just depends on the goal of the session. So makes sense to me. Well, it is 1 o'clock now, and I know Adam's got a call to get on, so we can cut this, and we can I'll get it posted up, and we'll do this again next week.
Perfect. All right, I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Talk soon.
All right, talk to you guys later. Cool, that went well.